guys, it's Tahira, and today I'm going to be talking about the 25 books I want to read in 2025. I can't believe that it's 2025 already. It has been such a crazy 2024. It was honestly a great reading year for me in terms of like the number of books that I read, but not like the quality, because there was a lot of flops and my reading year was not the greatest last year, which I feel like has been a theme I've been seeing around, that 2024 was not really anyone's greatest reading year. But I'm super excited about all the books I'll be talking about today. This is a mix of both new releases and books that I just want to read that are on my physical TBR or that have been on my radar for a while that I want to get to this year. So I'm just gonna be talking about all those books. Also, this is in no particular order. I did not go through and find all the release dates for all these books. I'm not putting them in any particular order. It's just like books that I know are coming out this year. So the very first book I'm going to be talking about is of course the new Emily Henry book, which I believe is coming out in April or May, and that is The Great Big Beautiful Life. This one is, I've heard, or she says herself, that it's like different from all her other books. I think it leans a little bit more into the fiction category, like literary fiction category, rather than just purely romance. It sounded like a lot like, honestly, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo the first time that I read the synopsis, because this one follows two writers and they are both vying for the opportunity to interview this like big Hollywood star actress, famous person. I'm not exactly sure what she does, but she's like old now. She's living in this house, I believe on an island, and then these two journalists, reporter people are trying to interview her, and they both get like a 1 month trial period, so they're kind of rivals. I guess this is kind of a rivals to lovers. All I know is that Emily Henry said it's inspired a lot by folklore by Taylor Swift, especially The Last Great American Dynasty, but overall I'm really excited for this one. Funny Story was a little bit of a flop for me last year. I was a little bit disappointed by it just because I loved Happy Place so much, and Happy Place was a 5-star read for me, but I'm really hoping that this one is gonna be it for me. Then we have probably the most excited I have been for a book in a really long time, and that is The Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is the newest Hunger Games book that follows Haymitch and his games. I honestly was not expecting this book at all, especially after Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I was kind of thinking that was it, that we were never going to hear from her again. But she has decided to come out with a new book, and I am so excited to see what she has to say, especially because usually like she says that she writes books when she has something to say, and I feel like with the current like political climate and just what's been going around in the world, I feel like there's so much to talk about, and I'm just really excited to see what she brings up in this book. And Haymitch is a character that I love. I've been wanting to know more about his story and his games for a long time. We do get little bits and pieces in Catching Fire, but I think just like his story is going to be really interesting, and I think it'll bring a lot of nuance to his character as well. Then we have a book that I am excited for, but it's not in my like highest, most like excited I've ever been for a book, but that is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the third book in the Empyrean series, which is the Fourth Wing books, and I really enjoyed Fourth Wing. It was one of my favorite books of last year, as in 2023, and I read Iron Flame, but I hated it. It was in one of my worst books of the year. So simultaneously in the same year, the first book of a series and a second book in a series were in my worst and best list, or best and worst list respectively. And honestly, like, I was so disappointed by Iron Flame. I think that it was rushed a lot because both of those books came out in the same year, and they're not short books at all. They're really chunky, and they're like fantasy books, so it takes a lot of time to build a world and have a magic system and build like a political conflict. So I was just really disappointed with the way that Iron Flame went. I am hoping that Onyx Storm will be a lot better. It seems like she took a little bit more time with this one than she did with Iron Flame, and I'm really hoping that we can see that in this book. And even though I didn't like Iron Flame at all, like I ended up giving it 2 stars, I am still like interested in where the story will go and how the plot will continue, especially after like the last book ended. So I will end up picking this one up, and I am like excited for it. Then we have a new V.E. Schwab book, and that is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. This is her newest, like, I want to say fantasy. I'm not exactly sure which genre it falls into, but I honestly don't know much about this book. All I know is that it follows like 3 different women across 3 different like time periods, and somehow their story like weaves together in a way. And I know that it's gonna be really good. Her writing is amazing. I really loved all of her books, and I'm just really excited for this one. Then we have Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her name. I'm so sorry. But this is book 2 to the Heartless Hunter series. I'm not sure like what that series is called, but it's like the second book in that. And I really loved Heartless Hunter. I read it last year. It was a really fun fantasy romance book following a witch and a witch hunter. And just the way that the last book ended, I'm really interested to see like their dynamic and how the plot continues. I am so skeptical of sequels always because I feel like they're always like not as good as the first one, but I'm really hoping for this one. I'm not exactly sure when it comes out. I believe like spring or summer of 2025, but I am looking forward to this one. The next book is a book that has already come out, I believe today actually. The day I'm filming this is a Tuesday. But is Beg, Borrow, and Steal by Sarah Adams. This one is the third book in the When in Rome series, which is like this contemporary interconnected standalone series by Sarah Adams. And I've read both When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect, and I think I just really love the small town that's been created in this world. I liked Practice Makes Perfect more than When in Rome. I don't know if I love the whole celebrity thing in When in Rome, but Practice Makes Perfect was so adorable. I love the dynamic between the characters, and this one, it follows a teacher and maybe another teacher. I'm not sure what the profession of the male main character is, but it follows like the sister, one of the sisters from like this family. And I know it's gonna be adorable. I hope that it is. I'm really excited for it. I haven't read other Sarah Adams books, but I know she has more out there, and I'm definitely interested in reading those as well. But since Beg, Borrow, and Steal is already out, I'm hoping to get to it soon. Then we have another Cassandra Clare release, and that is The Rag Picker King. This is book 2 in the Swordcatcher series, which I read not this, was it this past year? No, I read it the year before, so it's been a while. It's been like a year and a half, but I really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite of Cassandra Clare's works. Like, I definitely prefer her Shadowhunter world, obviously because I've been reading it for so long and I'm so familiar with it. But it was definitely an interesting start to a fantasy series. It's her first like adult debut as well. And Swordcatcher wasn't super adult to me. Like, it didn't feel like there was a lot of adult themes in it, but I know that this book gets a little bit spicier and has more adult themes, I think, related to the romance. But I'm still really interested in it. I enjoyed Swordcatcher. Like, it wasn't my favorite, but I really enjoyed it. I think the plot was interesting. The dynamics between the characters were interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they continue on in the second book. She's also doing a tour for this book, and she's coming to Seattle, which is where I live. And I'm so excited to see her because I've literally been waiting for this moment since like I was 13. So literally, and I'm almost 23 this year. So literally 10 years I've been waiting to meet her, and she never comes to the West Coast. I'm like beyond excited to see her. It's like literally a dream come true for me. Then we have another sequel, and that is Enchantra by Kaylee Smith. This is a sequel to Phantasma. And these are interconnected fantasy standalones, which I haven't actually seen that much before. But I am interested in this one because I love Phantasma so much. Last year it is in one of my favorite books of the year, and I just really enjoyed the world and the plot and the premise. This one does follow like a different character. It follows the main character from Phantasma's sister, so it's like a completely different story. But I'm hoping for crumbs of the main couple from the first book because I just love their dynamic so much, and I'm really hoping that I can like her sister's story just as much as like her story in Phantasma. So I am a little bit hesitant about this, but I think it's going to be really good, and I'm really looking forward to it. I feel like we need to count on how many times I say I'm looking forward for something or I'm excited about it, because I don't know, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be every other word's going to be I'm excited. Then we have Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man by Jessie Q Santanto. This is the sequel, I believe, or book 2 at least, in I don't know how many books this series is going to be, but the first one was Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, which is a really fun cozy kind of mystery book, and it was really fun. I read it last year, and I was honestly not expecting to like it as much as I did. It follows this like old woman named Vera Wong. She has this tea shop, and one day she finds a body in there, so she kind of takes it upon herself to figure out what happened to this body and like who killed this person, and we kind of follow her journey as she's doing that, and as well as she like brings in all these people and they kind of form like a found family of sorts, which I thought was really, really great. She's like an old Asian lady, like no nonsense type of person, and it's really fun to follow her, even though it's like frustrating at times. But I think that it was a really, just overall a really fun book, so I'm hoping that that continues in the second book, and I'm excited to see where Vera Wong gets up to. Then we have such a sad release, but also good, but that is the last Heartstopper book by Alice Oseman. Volume 6 I believe is coming out this year, probably later in the year. I still haven't read volume 5 because I want to reread the first 4 before I do that. But I'm so sad because Heartstopper is such a like heartwarming like romance book, graphic novel, and I have been rereading it so many times. I have reread it like almost every year. I have been following these books for a while. I just love Nick and Charlie so much, and the series just like I have loved it. I've like talked about it so much in these videos too. Like I feel like I talk about it in like every other video, but I just love the Heartstopper series so much, and I'm so sad to see it like end. So it's like a bittersweet release because I am of course excited for it to come out, but like knowing it's the last release in this series I believe is like really, really sad. Then we have Fearless by Lauren Roberts. This is the third book in the Powerless trilogy. This is like one I am excited for, but also a little bit hesitant with because I read Reckless earlier last year, as in 2024, and I just was disappointed by it because I felt like there were so many expectations after Powerless, and it kind of just didn't come through. It was a little bit slower. It felt like random scenes that were happening just to further the romance and not the plot. And I don't know, it was just kind of a weird book, but Lauren Roberts did say that that book was meant to be a little bit of a breather before we get into like the craziness of the third book. So that makes me think that there's gonna be a lot of action, and that's causing me to have high expectations for Fearless, but we'll see that how it goes. But it is on my radar, and like I do want to read it. Then we have a new Holly Jackson book, and that is Not Quite Dead Yet. I don't actually know much about this book, but Holly Jackson is such a great author. She's one of my favorite authors. I loved her Good Girls Guide to Murder series. Like I love that series so much. It's so fast paced and so gripping. And I have liked her other books, not as much as Good Girls Guide to Murder, but I think she has a knack for writing these like YA mystery thriller books. So I'm really excited to see what happens in this one. Actually, I believe this is her first like adult debut too. So I'm interested to see like how that goes and how like what changes in her writing and in her plot to make it more adult. Like, is it gonna be more darker? Is there gonna be more romance? Is it just gonna be more gory or violent? Like, I don't know, but I'm excited to see what she does with the new like adult limits, I guess. Then the last new release of 2025 that I'm going to be talking about is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have loved Taylor Jenkins Reid's like newer historical fiction romances. I don't know exactly how to explain like this new type of book that she's been doing, but I love Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I love Daisy Jones and the Six. I loved Malibu Rising as well. I haven't yet read Carrie Soto is Back, but I'm hoping to sometime. But Atmosphere, like the premise sounded super interesting. It follows a pilot in the 80s, I believe, and I think the pilot, it's a female main character. So I think she's one of the first female, like, not pilot, astronaut, yeah, one of the first female astronauts to do something. I don't exactly know what the plot is, but I know it's going to be good because I love Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing, and just like her plots and her like recent plots, I guess, have been really interesting, and the stories have been really good, so I'm really excited about this one. So now we're going to be going into all the books that are on either on my like physical TBR or on like are not new releases that I really want to get to this year. The first one I feel like I've talked about quite a bit is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Mistborn series, which of course is a series of legend. Like, I have heard so many good things. I have been really excited to get into like the Cosmere world, and I've heard that this is the best place to start, even though I personally started with Elantris, which I feel like wasn't the greatest decision on my part. because that one was just a lot slower than I was thinking. But this one I am really, really excited for. I have like so many high hopes and expectations for this series, and I really hope that it doesn't disappoint. But I will be getting to this book finally this year because it's been too long and I finally need to start my Brandon Sanderson journey. Then we have finishing my Throne of Glass reread, which I started last fall, and I was hoping to finish it last fall too, but I got into a reading slump. But I'm just gonna hold this book because this is the next book. But yeah, Heir of Fire is my next pick. I'm hoping to probably get to this in the next like month. These are when the books start to get longer, so it's a little bit intimidating, especially with Kingdom of Ash, the last book being almost 1,000 pages. But I've talked about this before, but I've been really, really enjoying my Throne of Glass reread. It's just so nice to be back in the world and following the story that is so near and dear to my heart, and I'm just having so much fun with it. Then is a R.F. Kuang book, and that is The Poppy War. I recently read Yellowface last year, but it was one of my most disappointing books of the year. But this one is one that I've heard so much about. This one I've been hearing since even when it came out, even before Yellowface came out. I've heard so much hype for it, and just for her like fantasy books in general. So I am really, really excited about it. I've been really wanting to read this for a while, for the past couple of years. So I'm deciding that 2025 is the year that I will read The Poppy War. Next is a little bit tentative because it's a really long series. So it's a really long commitment, and my sister is currently reading the series right now, and that is the Zodiac Academy series. At least I want to get to like the first book, or at least the first few books, because this is a 12-book series, and I don't know if I have it in me to read a 12-book series where the last few books are definitely above 1,000 pages in the year, because that would be literally like 20% of my reading. So we'll see. But Zodiac Academy is such a popular series, and the thing about this series is that so many people say that you have to wait a few books until it starts getting good, and I don't know, that annoys me so much. Like, why do I have to wait like 5 books before it gets good? Like my sister was saying, it literally took until book 5 and 6 to actually get good. And people say that maybe around book 3, 4 is when it actually starts to get good. So I might have to push through the first few before I start really enjoying it. There's also like a couple other series within the whole world. So it's like a massive world with a lot of books. And I'm a little bit intimidated by like just the sheer amount of books that are in the world and in the series. So we'll see when I get to this, but I am hoping to at least get to the first book this year. Then the next book I have is Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna. This is a contemporary book. Kristen Hanna is like such a beloved author, and she's really known for writing really emotional stories. And honestly, she writes like, I think her recent books have been more historical fiction. This one is more literary fiction, and it follows a group of best friends and like starting from their childhood to as they grow up, and talking about like how friendship changes as you grow older. I do have I have a couple other Kristen Hannas on my TBR, like physical TBR, but I think this one is just the one that's been calling to me the most. So I definitely want to get to this one this year. Then we have 2 other chunky books, and that is Binding and Keeping 13. I don't remember who the author is, but this one is a really popular, like I believe contemporary book series. I guess there's kind of some spin-off standalone. I don't know how this series works, because we have Binding and Keeping 13, then we have Saving and Redeeming 6, I believe, and then Taming 7. So they're all like, they're connected in some way to each other, but I don't know how they're all connected together. But Binding and Keeping 13, I've heard so many good things about it. So many people love those books. My sister loved those books as well. They're also really chunky, so they're a little bit intimidating, but they're on Kindle Unlimited, so I think one day I'll just pick it up and start reading it. But I'm really, really excited. I've heard a lot of great things about it. Then the next book was also on my fall TBR, because I don't know why, because I wanted to read it, but then I didn't read it, because what a shocker, I don't read the books that are on my TBR. But that is Dune by Frank Herbert. I saw the first 2 movies recently in 2024, and I really loved the movies, but I wanted to get into the world too, because obviously the books are always going to have stuff that the movie doesn't. And I wanted to pick it up because I thought the world was really interesting, and I thought the characters and the story was really interesting. So I wanted to see it in like book form, just because I know it's going to be different and it's going to bring something different that's not in the movies. So yeah, hoping to get to this sometime. It is also like a bit 700 pages, almost 650, so it is also intimidating. But I'm hoping to sometime this year hopefully get to this book. Then we have a fantasy book, and that is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, I believe is the author. This one is a really popular fantasy book that got popular last year. I've been hearing about it like all year, and so many people love it. It is also a really big book. It's like 700 plus pages. I don't know why I have so many big books on my TBR. But this one is a fantasy book, fantasy romance, I believe, and I don't exactly know what the plot is, but I've just heard so many good things, and I've heard it's good for fans of Sarah J Maas, and of course I am a fan of Sarah J Maas, so hopefully I will like it. I know the second book is probably coming out this year, Ballad of Falling Dragons, which I thought was such a great title. The cover is also so beautiful for this book, and it was on KU, but now it's not anymore, so now I'm so sad. But I really am hoping to get to this one actually pretty soon. Then we have another one on my physical TBR, and that is a novel love story by Ashley Poston. This one is another release from the author of The 7-Year Slip, and 7-Year Slip was one of my favorite books of 2024. It was like my only 5-star of the year, so I have really high hopes for this one. The only thing is I've heard a lot of mixed reviews for this one, like compared to The 7-Year Slip. People didn't love this one as much, and I know that Ashley Poston is coming up with a new book in the summer, so I have to get to this one, but I'm just so scared because I love 7-Year Slip so much, and I'm just really like hesitant about this, and I'm scared that I'm not gonna like it. But I think I just have to do it. I think I probably just have to tune out what everyone is saying about it and just make my own opinion. So yeah, I am putting this on my 2025 TBR because I do want to read it, preferably before her new book comes out, because I also want to read that. But yeah. Then we have the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. This is in the Caraval world, I believe. I've been rereading the Caraval books recently, and I still have the last book finale to get to, but I've heard so many good things about Once Upon a Broken Heart. It's like, I've heard it's really magical and whimsical and fantastical, and I've seen like so many things about it online everywhere, so that makes me like really hyped for the book. But I think I'm gonna read finale before I get to those, but those are definitely still books that I'm really interested in reading. Then we have A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This one I also don't really remember what this one's about, but I've heard a lot of great things. I have heard about S.T. Gibson as an author in general, and honestly, her other books aren't really like, I know she just came out with a book recently, I believe. Honestly, none of her other books are really like calling to me or really interesting to me, but I've heard A Dowry of Blood, like so many raving reviews about this one. So this one is the one that's on my TBR, and I finally need to get to it sometime. And the last book, which I am so glad to say that it was my first read of the year, so I have already read it, so I'm doing already great on my 2025 TBR, and that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This one is a super popular fantasy romance series, and I have heard so many good things about it. It's literally everywhere, and I ended up giving it like 3.5 stars, so not like amazing, but I still really enjoyed my time with it, and I'm excited to continue on. But yeah, I have already read it. One book checked off of my 25 books, so now I only have 24 that I need to read. Realistically, am I gonna read every single book that's on this list? Probably not, but I might surprise myself and maybe do it. The only thing is 25 books is 50% of my reading almost, so we'll see how that ends up going, like reading the books. Maybe I'm like a speed demon and I speed through all these books and I read every single book that I want to, but realistically that's not gonna happen. We'll see though with how everything goes. I hope to get to these books soon. A lot of new releases, some physical TBR, some books on like just from my radar that I've been seeing online a lot. But I am really excited for all the books that are on this list because they're all books I've been really wanting to read for a while. That is it for all the 25 books I want to read in 2025. Let me know down below what is your most anticipated release or read book of 2025, as of course I would love to know. But that is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.